iDS Talks is a podcast dedicated to helping corporations and law firms find new and effective ways to leverage data, giving them a decisive advantage both in and out of the courtroom.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of iDS Talks. My name is Hunter McMahon, and I'm the president of iDS, and we're joined here today by our very own Drew O'Shaughnessy. Today, we're going to have a great conversation about how curiosity meets innovation. Now, before we get started, let's give yourself a little bit of an intro, Drew. Who are you?
Do it. I am Drew O'Shaughnessy. I'm a consultant in analytics, specializing in AI with a little bit of a focus in investigations as well. But I hail from Green Bay, Wisconsin. In my personal life, I'm a Packer fan, and I'm always happy to talk football with anyone.
Awesome. Well, a fun factoid that our listeners might not know is that you like to give tours in Charleston, South Carolina. Is that true?
That is true. That is true. I think it is now becoming a rumor around Charleston that anytime someone's in town from iDS, they get a free tour from me. So we'll just we'll keep that going, and I'm a bit of a history nerd as well, so that plays along with it.
I love it, though I'm a bit offended. I think the last two times I've been in Charleston, you've been conveniently out of town, but we'll let that for the moment.
We'll let it slide. We'll let it slide next time.
Awesome. So as you know, I'm a big fan of curiosity, but you've come up through different avenues into our space and now really charging forward with the analytics and investigations. You do not give yourself enough service. You're constantly investigating something, whether it's image analysis. I know you've done this last week, or leveraging AI and big data. So what does that mindset mean for you when you're looking into a new technology or a new solution?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned a curiosity. I think curiosity is the largest factor, specifically when it comes to investigations. But when it comes to leveraging analytics as a whole, whether that is structured analytics, unstructured analytics, AI, any advanced form of analysis, I think it all starts at curiosity. We have to ask ourselves important questions to figure out what the problem is that we're trying to solve. And once you identify that problem, that's when you can look at solutions.
Well, now, how often do you get the phone call from a client and say, well, I need to know the answers, but they don't even know the questions that need to be asked?
That's right. It's more and more common than you'd think. Every client knows what they want at the end of the day, and it's our job to help them get there. And so we pride ourselves on finding the questions and then the answers to the questions and then the solution to the problem.
Absolutely. So you actually have to start with the questions before you can even figure out the solution.
That's right. I think so. I think curiosity plays directly into creativity, and creativity goes directly to innovation, right? So we have to get curious before we can identify the problem that we need to come up with a creative solution for, and then we can repeat that creative solution and innovate. I think they all go hand in hand.
So one of the things you've said a couple of times is create in solutions versus get something done, right? If it's something that we know how to get done, that's not necessarily the problem. That's more of an assembly line. That's just a task execution. But you talked about it at the beginning, the analytics, right? Kind of doing that investigative mindset and being able to say, where should we go? How should we get there? How do you set that up, though, on a new engagement or with a client when you're in that exploratory phase? Where do you start?
Yeah, I think you start with asking questions. That's the biggest one. You have to learn from the client like we talked about earlier, what's the outcome they're looking for, and how do we meet that outcome? So it starts with finding out what the client is looking for at the end of the day. And I think that is done by diving deep into the questions, into the nitty-gritty, into the details, and really immersing ourselves in the problem, right? Especially when we're talking about investigation. As much information as we can have to start with, we always welcome it. We don't want it to bias ourselves and bias our investigation, obviously, but we welcome any information that we have that we can get a footing ahead in the investigation, or even in the use of analytics. You mentioned the differentiation between doing something and coming up with a solution for something, and sometimes we may have something we've already done before, a solution we've already come up with that solves a different problem, but we may need to revisit that and see how we apply it to a new problem. It may be a tested and true solution that we can apply in a different way.
I love that. So you've got a bag of tools
Yeah.
or a toolbox full of tools, and you know that you how to use them individually, and you know the combination you used them before, but it's asking those questions up front to understand what tools are necessary to achieve the home project that you've been asked to execute on
Right.
week.
Right. That's right. And our tool belt's always growing, right? I think that's an incredible thing in where the industry sits today. Um, you know, we are always using the best tools, but new tools are being made every day, right? And we pride ourselves on putting ourselves on the cutting edge of those new tools, right? We immerse ourselves in AI, LLMs, and Gen AI. We partner with amazing people out there to teach ourselves what is going on in the industry and what's going on outside of our industry that we may be able to apply in our industry. Um,
How
and
do
so
you
I
make
think,
time? I mean, you're busy, you're traveling
yeah,
right now. You know, we were talking about all the travel that you've got going on.
yeah,
How do you make time? I mean, I feel even I love this stuff, but I feel at times overwhelmed with like I want to try 17 new things, but I got to get the day job done and I got to get
yeah.
this done and the kids off to practice. Like finding the time.
Absolutely. I think, well, I don't have kids that have to get to practice right now, which is a, a huge time saver, I think. But you mentioned it that you love this stuff. I think that's the way that you make time. It doesn't feel like you're spending time on it when you truly love what you're doing. When you love what you're working on, it feels like you're sparking a passion, right? You don't have to build in extra time to test new things because circling back to how we started this conversation, you get curious, you get creative, and you start to innovate. And it's something you enjoy doing.
I love it. So let's think about what's your favorite question to ask, and it can't be why.
My personal favorite, and this probably goes back to goes back to my love of history, but I love asking about the background. I sometimes we are tasked with a problem that isn't always made clear unless you know the background. I love to know the factual background of a case, whether or not it pertains to the problem at hand. We may be doing a TAR review, something that uses machine learning, something that and we work with a team to sort documents into positive and negative. And that whole process, you could get through it without knowing the background of a case. But sometimes you immerse yourself in the background of the case, immerse yourself in the factual knowledge, the history of what happened and how we got here. And that's where new creative solutions come in. So I think that's my favorite question to ask is tell me the background, tell me how we got here, give me the history, 10,000-foot overview. I want to know what happened in the past.
I love it, sir. I really do. Well, I want to thank you, Drew, for joining us today, and of course, our listeners. If you'd like to learn more about IDS or subscribe, you can visit idsinc.com or wherever you normally get your podcast from. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to the next edition of IDS Talks.